Hello and welcome back, everybody. Over there in Florida is a very happy Rish.
Uh, uh, moderately happy. It's a sliding scale. Our news is so terrible, and I watch it in the mornings. And that's rolling over in Scotland.
Not having much better news, unfortunately, but I guess at the end of this session with us, people will understand why we're having a good humor about it because it is just as we've been saying is the world is changing, but not in the way that uh, the mainstream thought is currently going, is
No,
it?
I would say that the world is reverting back to its natural state. I could make argument that the last 80 years has been an outlier of overall global peace. I know obviously there was plenty of dying, plenty of wars, plenty of conflicts, but in the grand scheme of things, the last 80 years has been the exception, not the rule. The
Yeah.
rule has been regional to smaller powers warring for control of resources on a more local level. And this globalization thing is something new that we tried.
Yeah.
So I would say it's just kind of going back to the status quo.
Well, look at it from this point of view. There were several periods across human history where globalization was a thing, at the contemporary meaning, of course. So
Yeah.
the prosperity of, particularly from a German perspective, from the 60s to say the mid 2010s or the early or mid 2000s. Yeah, if we take the financial crisis as a watershed point, is as you were saying, um, not the first time, and the relative peace is, however, something that we haven't seen in that form or shape for quite a long time previously, especially when you consider the 19th centuries, the 1800s, where, yeah, I would say the peak of the British Empire and the first, yeah, in a way, globalization that was achieved by the power of arms of the British Empire, or more precisely, of those populations that were colonialized and then sent to wars locally
Yeah.
or regionally and globally
Uh,
to further the commercial interests of the British Empire. But yeah,
yeah, after they set up shop, they weren't against using the locals to do the dying.
well, absolutely, and in particular, the Indian population has been on the receiving end of this. So
Yeah,
it's
the
really a kind
British
of thing.
Raj.
Yeah, the first thing the British did essentially when World War One kicked off is started shipping Indian troops from India to uh, all the theaters of war. The problem was that the Indian army of the British Empire had a different organization and even weaponization than the regular troops of the
Well,
British.
that's because I would say that's because they weren't initially recruited and trained by the crown. Their European military tradition started with the East India Trading Company and their own private military.
Yeah. Well, how does this relate to our starting point that you suggested, the continuing violence in Sudan?
Well, the continuing violence in Sudan, I believe, is just the tip of the iceberg. As the U.S. is pulling back to to honor our Asian commitments, people who legitimately want us to be there where we're seen as friends and not, or at least a necessary entity. And instead of in some places in the Middle East, outright hatred and loathing. I mean, you see the terrorist attacks. So as America pulls away from the Middle East and covers our Asian goals, and then also the Western Hemisphere is we've already guaranteed the independence of any country unless we want to change your government in North and South America. And obviously we have to control the entirety of a hemisphere from top to bottom, left to right. So that's a lot of money. That's a lot of commitments. And our
Yeah,
weapons are only getting more and more advanced to where losing an aircraft for us is the GDP of some small nations. So as we pull back from the Middle East, it's kind of, it's the buffer's gone. The buffer's
yeah,
gone, and regional powers who when we went there, and and the British were there and the French were there and Russia's there now, and Syria, and and Sudan. As these countries retract, all of these foreign powers interrupted conflicts. The people who are there, they didn't forget these. They didn't forget
yeah.
these conflicts, and not only to mention,
I mean,
a
there's a
lot of
history
these
of that, right?
countries are not used to ruling themselves. Before America was there unofficially ruling, and the British were there outright ruling, in Saudi Arabia, Jordan, all these different places, they haven't been sovereign nations in a long time, because
Yeah,
before that it was the Mamelukes and the Ottomans,
Persian Empire. Yeah,
and before that it was the Persians. So
yeah,
these are places where uh, they've been broken up. They're used to being part of large empires, but now it's reverted back to the way it was before empire building. And they still have, you know, 20 generations deep feuds between each other. There's
yeah,
differences in economics, there's differences in secular. They don't see themselves as a one people. People from North Africa get very upset if they're called Arab or referred to as Arab. It's There's so many complexities, and now all these empires have, every time they leave, the weapons stay. And these people have legitimate gripes. To them, it's legitimate. If both sides
yeah.
see it as a legitimate reason to go
Well,
to war, who are we? So the rise of regional conflicts, I think, is inevitable. And to bring it to where we're going to start off, I think the next real big one that you can see is Saudi Arabia versus
yeah.
Iran.
I mean, this is really like a frozen conflict to me in the Middle East. And first of all, why are the Americans? Why were the Americans there in the first place? The first time there was a real military commitment in the most recent future is the 1991 Gulf War.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, large number of troops have been stationed in Saudi Arabia. So,
Well, and in 91, we were technically invited. Now, we were invited by basically the smallest country in the region,
yeah.
but we were invited.
Well, not only the Kuwaitis invited you. It was the Saudi Arabians, because they knew, if Saddam and Iraq control the majority of the oil resources outside our nation. Well, what are we going to do about that? Because he's going to have designs about spreading his influence further, which was a
He
real
wants his
option
empire.
for him.
And there
And
was the
well,
Termites too. I mean,
I don't think initially Saddam had any designs concerning that kind of idea, but the repeated failure of the Arab League or the oil-producing states to resolve the oil-borne conflicts in the region certainly played a role. So at the end of the Iran-Iraq war, Saddam Hussein was deeply indebted to Kuwait as well as Saudi Arabia. And his rationale was, guys, I am basically fighting you a war here. So
mhm.
why are you demanding your money back, which is not good, a good Islamic practice? Yeah. So,
But not only when you make a demand, to someone who sees themselves as stronger than you, the next two words, I don't care what language, it translates to two words, or what.
yeah. So
You give
going
me the
further
money,
from that,
or
going further
what?
from that, in I mean several, as you said, not only terrorist attacks, but the general cultural conflicts, even small disagreements in this is how the world runs. Yeah, is look at women's rights, look at all kinds of stuff. Yeah, and that's not to say that this region hasn't attempted to improve or improved at all, but there is still a large discrepancy, and at the end of the day, it's also a matter of perception. So I think Trump was the first one to really speak it out in plain English. Why should we die in the Middle East for oil? So
Well,
fast
also under
forward.
Trump, the United States was a net exporter of oil. We have oil.
Very often, yes. So number one,
We have
the
our own
Americans
oil.
do have oil,
And
and
natural gas, we are
first,
the Saudi Arabia of natural gas. Fracking is terrible for the environment, but it's amazing for gas yields.
so that is exactly the point. At this moment in time, the states are essentially energy independent. There's always on a daily, monthly basis some fluctuations where the Americans are net exporters or net importers, and surprisingly, most of the energy trade is with the direct neighbors south of us, or you. So Mexico, number one. And interestingly, the Mexicans are selling the United States about the same amounts of oil back and forth. So,
Well, and if why go to the Middle East if we wanted to do some regime changes and drop some bombs? Venezuela is a lot closer.
that is one thing. And we are also buying you are also buying energy products from Venezuela, Colombia, and so on and so forth. So, but exactly.
That's the secret.
So
Well,
there is.
Colombia, no, our relationship with Colombia has done nothing but improve since the late 80s, but our
Uh,
relationship with Venezuela has not.
well, there's ups and downs in every relationship.
If you're an American and you go to Venezuela, you need to be prepared for captivity, torture, to have your face on
Pretty
the
much.
news.
But
You
going
would
back to the
rather
Middle
be in
East,
Putin's Russia as a spy.
neither. Thank you. Going back to the Middle East, um, as early as I think 2004, 2005, the Saudis realized that once Iraq is wrapped up, in terms of installing whatever government is there, the Americans will start to pull out from the Middle East. Hence, loads of investment in military capabilities. The Saudis bought, was it the Saudis? It's what either the Saudis or one of the Emirates there bought a truckload of Eurofighters and Mirage fighter jets, basically as a middle finger for the Americans.
Well, that's
So
because Saudi Arabia and UAE before that were two of the biggest importers of the F-16.
yeah.
So now the Eurofighter, in my opinion, is an upgrade to the F-16. It keeps being modernized, but the F-16 is iconic. It's great, but yeah, the Eurofighter has a higher cost per flight hour. It's a higher initial sticker cost, and it's not made in America. So you kind of figure out where they were headed with it.
So yeah.
No, fair point. Fair point to you.
Yep. So
It's more expensive, and they're like, yeah, we'll take that.
now we have a Saudi Arabia that and Iran. don't forget about that. Two countries who consistently believe they are the big cheese in the Middle East, and the Middle East should be united under their leadership.
but they
that's
are
the big clash in the Middle
vastly
East.
different religion for
Exactly.
the most part, different sect of that religion, different language, different
Yeah.
geographic. If someone from Iran would be offended to be called Arab.
So you have this kind of
It's not the
situation. You
same
had
language, it's not the same
a
people.
proxy war in Yemen,
Yeah.
and now you have another country attempting to be a global player, China, negotiating peace between those two countries that could kick off a major war that goes beyond the region of the Middle East. So first thing that happens is after China is brokering that peace is another war in not Yemen, this time Sudan. And the other thing is, as you mentioned, the Persian Empire and the Ottoman Empire, they had massive uh, influence across northern Africa, Reconquista
Mm-hmm.
and so on and so forth. And there may still be people in different countries in the Middle East that think, well, we should have that back. Yeah. So why is Islam a major religion in not only northern Africa but throughout Africa? How has the white man failed to conquer Africa spiritually with religion? So there is certainly reasons for that, but
Yeah, well, you'd have to go all the way back to Roman times and then the Byzantine times, where the Christian policy was there was plenty of the
send them
yeah,
up. God will know His own.
yeah. Well,
So that's
before that
essentially it.
though, Christians back in Roman times, you take it back to like 200 AD, you know, things were different, but when Islam came, Islam had a very get down or lay down policy.
Yeah.
So the conversion rates from Christian to Islam and from pagan to Islam were higher than the opposite to Christianity,
Hmm.
because Christianity, yes, mass genocides, but they were a little slow to let's kill everyone that doesn't want to go, because
When you
Christianity
look at
was a
it, that
religion based on
really
persecution.
started
So I think that's why they were
in the Middle
hesitant to
East with the
persecute.
Crusades. Yeah,
Right.
I
But
mean,
see,
in
that's
Northern Europe, when
right.
Northern Europe was Christianized, there was also a lot of atrocities. So,
Right. But
um,
you're talking
but that was
circa
before the
post 500 AD. I'm talking
yeah
about when
500
Christianity was
2000.
first formed.
Yeah,
They were used to persecution, so I think they were a little hesitant, a little shy to. Now, don't
potentially
get me
that
wrong.
may have
As a
played a role.
Christian, I'm fully aware they found it with a vengeance when it came to the pagan religions of the
Yeah,
North,
yeah.
the Middle East, South America. Hell, that wasn't even God that destroyed them. That was germs. But
Yeah.
we digress. But yeah, no,
Yeah,
Christians
I
were
mean
slow to the
there is
party.
certainly a lot of sources for the conflicts. So you have these two powers. You have a conflict that could easily spiral out of control, relatively close to home even. So when you look at Sudan, South Sudan, that is North Africa, right with Egypt. And
Right.
Egypt hasn't had a very stable recent future as well. So
Arab Spring.
what you see is I need to move to 2015 and the huge refugee movement. All those Syrians from Northern Africa.
Mhm.
So Northern Africa, Balkans, and Afghanistan and
Yeah.
Iraq. Those is where our Syrians are from that period. So essentially, what happened is, and Germany took the lead in that, is the cabinet was meeting, realizing there is a massive influx and yet more people are to come. And the cabinet essentially decided we will shut the borders. Now, naturally, if you're Germany in the middle of Europe and you shut your borders, that is a little bit inconsequential because the people are already here in the neighboring countries. Um, the next step supposedly was to really put people on the European borders and start shooting at people, defending those borders. Then the question was raised, well, who is going in front of the press and says that? Maybe not in these words, but I mean, say about journalism what you want. That is exactly what would have been in the press. And the German government collectively chickened out.
Well, that would have been the only
So,
way to stop the mass migration. America could do the same thing. We have the military capability. We have an entire department of, borders and customs.
look,
We have
this
Homeland
is
Security.
certainly not my opinion, but
But no, it would be terrible. But that would be the only way to stop the influx. And
terrible
it,
in what sense? It doesn't look good on the news.
no,
Yeah,
terrible as in you would have to make the idea of coming here so daunting, so opposing,
yep,
so like literally, if you go there
exactly.
illegally, those people will kill you if you try to do it. That's the only way to get these
So,
people, because that's just
I
one
mean,
step worse
the
than where they're
situation
coming from.
with
That's how bad it is where they're at.
exactly, exactly.
You would just
So,
have to assure
I
death to
see
stop the migration, and
what I am
obviously you can't do that.
trying to
That's
say is exactly that. Once migration is incentivized, it's going to happen, and that's
yeah.
not me saying I don't want this, because in the case of the states, there is a history of taking the best people from all over the world, making them Americans, and do something greater. Yeah, so there is a real case for immigration.
Yeah, but now we're
So.
taking everybody, criminals, narcos.
Uh, you will never stop illegal migration, and this is
Oh,
just as a
oh.
further extension on that topic, is why me, Lemore, being an immigrant myself, is not, white people call themselves expatriates when they go to a foreign country and work there, but that is essentially what I'm doing. So,
That's not what I called myself abroad.
but
That
the
must be
point
a
I'm trying to
European
make is
fashion.
uh, the point I'm trying to make is that the chance or the lottery of birth has no bearing on your personal individual ability to better yourself and contribute to society around you, and whether that is the society you were born into or somewhere else is, for me, really, I am a person that is beyond the, shall we say, I, or in other words, I do question the viability of the nation state in modern times. We have far bigger problems than to worry about. Oh, this guy is from that country; it's not my country, and so forth.
Mhm.
So there is a real economic case for migration and immigration. It is a totally different question, and that is the next thing I was going to say. Because in subsequently to one of the people that went to the train stations applauding that the refugees, wherever they were from, were coming to Germany, asked himself, well, how many have you taken home with you? None. So
Zero.
if you are if you are welcoming people to your house, your country, then you need to understand there is consequences for that, and that is very neutral saying the resources and the abilities that are there are now shared with more people, because even under the best circumstances, those people are not implementing themselves into the economy on day one as a
Well,
benefactor.
I
That
heard that
sure.
a lot of UK males now have an ex-wife and a brand new young Ukrainian wife. So that seems like integrating pretty strong.
Well, that's another form of integration, but in terms
Maybe you
of
ladies should
UK
have kept
law,
your men a little happier. Yeah.
in terms of um, immigration policy, I can tell you that Home Office is very well aware of all the cases where temporary residencies are issued based on marriage, and there is real cases of people that I actually know
Yeah.
that were. Well, there was a case.
Wait,
I'm not saying any names, but there was a case where a Chinese lady um, married her boyfriend, and they happened to do their master's degree together. Yeah.
Do y'all
So
have the anchor baby policy or some form of
nope,
it? Do I need to explain
nope.
it?
Well, please explain anchor baby, but I can say no, we don't have it.
Anchor baby is considered when either someone comes but they can't get married, but they have a child. And in America, if you're born in America,
Yep.
you're an American. If one of your parents is American, you're also American.
Yep.
So there's immigrants who come here while they're
Give birth.
pregnant, and the child, instead of being, is born an American. So instead of putting that child into the system, and which needs, admittedly, massive overhaul is required. I'm aware of my nation's problems, and I will be honest about them, because that's what the channel's about. But once they have that American child, which is only American because it was born inside of our borders, a lot of times they'll let the parents stay,
Yep.
so that the child will have parents who share the same culture, because we're multicultural. We don't mind other cultures, but the parents a lot of times will basically be living legally illegal because the baby's there.
Because of the baby. Yep. I
So
mean,
that's
it's a
the
real
anchor
trend.
baby policy.
Mentioning Chinese, there is cases of Chinese babies being born just inside the air traffic identification whatever zone and claiming to be American. But there is no such policy, to my knowledge, here in the UK. But going back to that couple, they were a genuine couple. Everybody knew it. And at that time, we did not have a post-study visa. We have it again. We had it before. We have it again. So basically, what happened? Just one morning, the typical 5 o'clock ice raid in the morning kind of thing. And the
We
lady
do
was
ours
put
at
on a
4
plane.
a.m. 4 a.m. was decided that is when people are least likely to be able to mount a defense.
Yeah.
So that was not developed by our ICE agents. That was developed
Nope.
by our military and
Yep.
our armed, I would say police force, but the FBI and the ATF, dude, in most other countries, that would be their special forces of their
Yeah.
military with the training and the weapons. So
No, it's
ICE
basically
kind
what
of
happened.
learned, hey, at 4 a.m., most
Yeah.
people are asleep and not ready to stop us.
I mean, it's a system that works. So basically, what
Oh,
happened? The lady was, the couple was investigated, and
yeah.
the lady was put on the first plane out back to China.
And this
Boom.
is in the UK or
So
in,
this is in the UK, and
because
essentially,
this could be an American story very easily.
they were going to appeal, and the lady was literally told, "Well, you can appeal from China."
But
That is
China,
what happened.
but my
So
understanding, China's probably going to be pissed she didn't want to come home, right?
um. But
Because now she's educated.
there's this ambiguous thing. Yeah, there was a real thing about, it's called being a turtle. Yeah, coming back after you have acquired the knowledge from outside. Didn't go that well for them, because a lot of people that came back, just like my wife, yeah,
Yeah.
they came back, were sucked into this. This is your home. This is so great, and are waking up to the reality of, oh
Honeymoon
fuck.
phase.
Yeah.
It's a honeymoon phase.
It's more than a honeymoon phase. It's I had conversations with people that have gone through the same process, lived abroad for years, went back to China, and left as soon as they realized this is not their country anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, but again, we digress. So
We are
I mean,
so
what is
far off.
why we are speaking of China? Why did China broker a peace between those countries? And we said it many times before, that peace is not going to hold. Sooner or later, one of them will think, well, these are the other side of the family. Yeah, the cousin of my religion.
Yeah.
And they still think they are the big cheese, or should be the big cheese in the region, and claim
but
Arabia back for themselves. So,
and here's the thing: the three parties, the Iranians, the Saudis, and the Chinese, all consider themselves, by and large, to be
yeah,
superior
yeah.
ethnically
This is one thing people don't get
to the other
about
two groups.
China, but
They all
the
think no, but this
Han
thing they're
think
they're
they are
dicks.
the Aryans of the world. So there
And
is
so do the Arabs. The Arabs think they're the Aryans of
so, and
the
yes,
Middle East.
well, I have not, I wouldn't, I don't know enough Arabs or Persians to make that conclusion. But I know enough Chinese to say they really think of themselves as God's gift to humanity. And
I've had that with male engineers, civil engineers from India living in America as well. Females,
well, not so
not so
much.
much, almost
Well,
nothing. The
when you
males
look when you
very
look at
condescending, most of all to their own people.
not only India, but China as well as the Middle East, where females, well, even in the classless society of China, China is highly patriarchal. Yeah, so it is literally what the man says goes, and in larger proportion is the man in Beijing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but why
Winnie
does
the
China do
Pooh.
that?
Winnie.
They have absolutely no benefit from that, and the potential of, well, they can buy oil from the Saudis, the Iranians, and so on. That has nothing to do with it. It is nice to have more sanction-proof access, which they already have with the Russians. Problem is, well, they are not friends with each other, and
Nope.
as you rightfully said, and as I
Strategic
mentioned,
partner.
is Han Chinese look down very much on everybody. The Communist Party is literally on the opposite side of Western values, and they are not interested in these values. They are not interested in working out, well, why have these Western countries taken over for the last 400 years? They don't care. This is not only a rejection, it is going to Jordan Peterson. If people watch Jordan Peterson, he says those authoritarians, is particularly fascists, they are disgusted with the foreign other.
Mm-hmm.
So, and a really good summary of the foreign other was done by James William Gibson in context of the Vietnam War. And really, I do recommend that book of Bill Gibson, is Techno War: Why We Lost in Vietnam. And again, when you are historically inclined, you see so many parallels of, especially with China in regards to the Third Reich, in regards to the German Empire, and the failure of the Americans in Vietnam. So the Chinese solidly went at this not primarily for access to oil, but primarily as showing themselves as, well, we can replace the US. So I know there is this continuing myth of the yuan replacing the dollar. And please,
No.
everybody who listens to that, BS.
All right.
Look up
Roland
the
called it
definitions.
on this episode at 38 minutes.
Yeah, no, look at it from this point.
He said it right here.
There is definitions of what money is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And there is further definitions and accepted standards as to what an international reserve currency is. And when you take all these value standards and everything, and then look at the vicious desires and modus operandi of the Chinese Communist Party, who owns basically the Chinese yuan, it is completely at odds with each other. The yuan can factually never replace the dollar, period. Yeah, and any person putting that nonsense forward really is, I know I have been blocked by the people operating the Stanford's University's online presence when I said, well, not according to general accepted standards when they proposed that. So it is a real thing. What uh, is a real problem in this world, and that is where I said the resurgence of the West is actually coming. Is that we have gone into the faulty assumption of believing what we want to be true, very similar to what the Chinese are doing in general, and currently economically failing very badly, even starting to admit it, not only between lines but very openly. So, but how does that relate further in geopolitics? I mean, we both have a very negative view on Mr. Macron's comments regarding China and Taiwan. And now news
Well,
surfaces that
let's talk about what he said about Africans.
I don't really want to go that far, but there's a connection. There's a connection I want to make. Is France and China working together for a Ukrainian peace deal, and which is basically now dead in the water after the well, unfortunate is a euphemism, but the comments the Chinese foreign ministry made regarding that the Baltic states, Ukraine, and all former Soviet republics are not independent nations is essentially born out of the worldview of the Chinese Communist Party. Taiwan is ours, and of course we prop up our communist buddy, the Soviet Union, to reclaim theirs. Yeah, and even more. So the thing is immediately, I think it was the Baltic states, actually, not Zelensky himself, that said, and that is why we auto reject anything China says or does, the Baltic states. And please bear in mind, the Lithuanians are very motivated to keep China out of Europe and any Chinese influence after basically getting a bit too much into bed with Taiwan and China exercising economic coercion. So it's all these policies of China. When you go back just a couple of years, the attempted economic coercion of Australia, and now going back to please sell us coal. No, we won't. And crying foul when the Australians, as literally as a first reaction was with they selling their coal to India and then buy nuclear submarines. So it is starting to roll back this insanity of putting feelings and emotions and what you want, like, and believe over hard facts. So the hard fact is Macron is facing a lot of issues at home. Not necessarily because he's an idiot. I mean, the reforms he's initiated, they do have a point and they are overdue in France. But France is also a nation that has experienced a decline from the French Empire to what it is now. And they still want to stay relevant, particularly as you are going to talk about France's connection with not only North Africa.
Right. So this is how France plays in. And as we were discussing, the U.S. is pulling back from the Middle East, and by extension, North Africa is on the way there as our ships sail. And then I see Russia having to pull back just because their demographics are screwed. They're not going to have the manpower. They're on the economic collapse. They're going to have to pull out of areas like Syria and mind their own business a lot more.
I mean, Russia is basically on life support, as we said last episode.
Right. They can't park their one aircraft carrier off of Syria and do like 10 sorties and say we did something anymore.
Update on the aircraft carrier as soon as you're done.
So I see France trying to shore itself up by being the bridge to that void. And the reason why is they never really left. So they've been in North Africa, they've been in Egypt at times, they've been in Central Africa, but when France left Africa and those nations became independent, they never really were, because France has kept them under boot through the CFA. The CFA is the African Financial Community, and the CFA franc is a currency. It is not the French franc. It is an African currency, and it's used by former French colonies, and the French use it to control these countries through economics.
Economically, yeah.
And some people might say, well, Macron said very nice things about Africa. All right, according to a paper published by the Harvard International Review, Macron, here's the nice things he said, called the institution crime against humanity during a visit in Burkina Faso, which is the I'm going to butcher that word, neo-colonialism. There we go. Now, when he thought he was off the record, so this is the guy who said that. He said it was a crime, neocolonialism is a crime against humanity. And he said, quote, I am from a generation that does not come and tell Africa what to do. But when he was attending, sorry guys. All right. So during a different speech, which was at a different university on neocolonialism, he stated France only wants to help her brothers and sisters to succeed and help African youth to conquer its future. Then he also told a reporter the problem is civilizational, implying that there's something wrong inherently with the continent and its people to do for themselves. So if you're African and you love the first thing he said, you might want to hear all that racist bullshit that he followed up with.
It is well, first of all, it's counterfactual.
And there's 12
in Africa.
And just to there's 12 nations that are either on the Western or Central CFA franc. Yeah. So this isn't like one or two little countries.
No. The French Empire nations in Africa was really, really important, not only to the French economy, but plays definitely a role for
I
the
think
future
they'll
of
see
Africa.
this and go, it's France's time to shine. U.S. gone, Russia gone.
Absolutely,
remember the French, baby?
Well, Russian aircraft carrier. Essentially, why they are not decommissioning and trashing it is because they only have one. Yeah. So, and having one on the record, which I think it burned again.
Well, you know why they have one, right?
Yeah,
it's the only one that China and India wouldn't buy.
They sold 2 to China and 1 to India.
Yeah. But India and China are both domestically produced. They're not going to buy another Russian boat.
Nope.
No.
Yeah, there is currently
aircraft carrier or anything.
If you want to look at the Chinese aircraft carriers, they have one in the docks right now being built, the Type 3 being built, the Type 4. Type 4 or Type 3. So basically my last check on Google Earth and Google Maps was you could see the Shandong at that time being fitted out and the Fujian being ready to being just after launch, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, but it would help if
Russian
their planes. I would help them if their planes could take off with either fuel and bombs instead of fuel or bombs.
Well, there is an update to that. Russian aircraft carrier. The Russians wanted to start building one 2020 actually. 2019, 2020.
It was probably going to go to that base they wanted in Sudan.
Potentially. I mean, they wanted to build 2 or 3, and the design is really not too bad and surprisingly very similar to what the Chinese built as the Type 3, the Fujian. So
which was based off of
mm,
what the Soviets built. So it's Russia
yep.
copying China, copying Soviets.
Well, there is they have several options for that carrier. It's called the Storm. So Storm, yeah, and they don't want to put the MiG-29 on it, so they do want to put a more modern aircraft on it.
Well, like
The
the new
Indians
Stu,
have
or
the 30, yeah, the what's it called, the Felon,
I'm not sure of the name.
and own well, if they are going to do that, number one, they're gonna have
What is
a
it? A Stu
problem as
57?
that's the Felon, I think.
Okay.
Well, need to go back to China on this one because they wanted initially to put the J-31s on it and realized, oh crap, saltwater corrosion is a real thing, and they are
Just a
not going
lot.
to remain stealthy. So, and one thing people need to understand is when you have a stealth aircraft and the stealth is disrupted, for example, by saltwater corrosion, it sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
So it's basically pointless, yeah, to maintain that kind of thing. And the Americans
Might as well just put the flankers up.
might as well put the flankers or the MiG-29s up there. And that is exactly well. The big problem for the J-15 is the engines are crap. So so the engines they stole from the Soviet Union / Russia are crap. The ones the stuff they improved are not much better, and even the Russians new ones they are developing are delayed for not only for reasons of sanctions. So yeah, I mean, one problem with that situation that the Americans are pulling out, to drawing the line back to where we came from, is if China really wanted to take over, and even for if we roll back globalization to protect its own trade routes without protecting anybody else's, yeah, they simply do not have the manpower, the experience, the equipment, and. So it's not going to happen. So really, the thing is, later Trump era, Biden era is a continuous oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck by the chairman, and really pushing those buttons where China has increased its own dependency on the Western world. So what we have, I think 2 days ago, reports of that essentially, first of all, she miscalculated the impact of COVID on the Western world. You have more and more research in terms of pointing the finger at not that COVID originates from China, but how they handled it, tried to cover it up. So what I'm missing is there was real groundbreaking work, waving the German flag a little bit. A German forensics professor,
Dude, yeah.
professor went at it.
When you're doing things that are worth the flag raising or waving to everybody, it's okay.
Well, I'm trying.
It was
to keep
that
it
whole
short
"you were the only
because,
one who thought it was a good idea" shit that was pissing the rest of us off.
well, at that moment we had leadership from Austria, you know.
Wait, what? Huh?
Yeah. Well, people don't want to hear that, but no, there was this forensics professor.
It may or may not have been a Juden.
Yeah, I mean, let me comment on this nasty period of our history. I am not only
We know the
appalled
nasty part.
because,
Say the nice
because
part.
of that. Yeah, it is that Jewish people have made so many positive contributions throughout German history, and to single out that particular group or any group,
Mhm.
is literally, I don't have words strong enough to describe that idea. And going the next step, that we then gave power to the left, at least in half of our country, to ruin it further, is showing the idiocy of extremism on both sides of the equation.
Yeah.
So now, German forensics professor is basically put himself in a pickle and has not received an apology because everything he said turned out to be true. So first thing he
Oh,
said
did
is,
they
well,
berate him in the news and try to cancel him and everything?
yep, pretty much.
Okay.
So conspiracy theorist is one of the nicer terms he has been endeared with. But first of all, he had the audacity to say that the Chinese government lied, will continue to do so. We will never hear from them what really happened. Boom. Statement one. The second thing he
What's
went
wrong with
at
that?
well, again, some people don't like hearing the truth. So the
Okay.
next thing he said is, well, looking at this whole COVID business, what well, his conclusion is now the dominantly accepted theory of it came from the lab. Yeah.
Duh.
So, and he said, well, he arrived at that conclusion by looking at, well, if the story the Chinese government perpetrates, or the stories, yeah, were true, this is the evidence we would be seeing, but it's missing. On the other side, if lab leak theory, or if it was, he didn't even say lab leak, if I remember right. He said if it was from China, this is the evidence that we would delete if the Chinese want to cover it up. And voila, here we are, because that is exactly what's missing. Another step of validation for that is there was, when the first US services started coming out with it's from the lab, immediately evidence being put into databases that we took more samples from this market, and it's from the market. So, and my question is, well, you said it's not from China, it's the Americans, the foreigners, the frozen food. However, how can you now say that it's from the market when you denied that?
The
So
only way it's from
literally,
the Americans is the funding the Obama administration put into that lab.
well, people are not stupid. They will start making connections. They will, and the capacity of people to look at factual evidence and start asking questions. Well, why are you saying one thing when the other thing is on black and white here on the bloody paper? Yeah.
Hmm.
And as you were saying in early episodes, follow the money. Yeah.
Exactly.
So there is this thing, and one of the consequences, going back to the economy, where the oh fuck started sinking in, is when Western economies also shut down and stopped buying or importing from China. Yeah, because if you are the biggest exporter, you are being disproportionately affected if the world economy slows down and collapses. So, um, mishap number one. Now, when the economy is starting to get going again, people are looking at, well, first of all, even if you're at the stage where you're saying the Chinese response has been less than forthcoming, yeah, is you have the other component of being mistreated and blamed for everything in the country where you are producing, and you start to ask yourself, well, why would I continue to do that? Yeah, why would I continue an abusive relationship if there are so many other
Yeah.
countries with, on top of that, a cheaper workforce? So
But
here we go.
you're not American. And I'm gonna point out something that's I'll say uniquely American that you're not getting. When it comes down to, okay, the economy's picked back up, who's gonna bring us our stuff? Even people in America who do not care about politics whatsoever, who do not care who's in any elected office, because screw them, they're all crooks, they're biased,
Yeah,
they're separatists, whatever it is. There's people in this country that care nothing about politics, care nothing about human rights, care nothing about who's the leader. There,
as long as
never underestimate the power of the American consumer. Oh,
yep,
remember for a year when I didn't get my shit on time?
yep.
Fuck them. And
Look,
sadly
that is
enough, that
exactly the
is an
point.
American thing
That-
where
It's
we
not only
won't
an
deal with
American
China
thing.
because Jeffrey Bezos said Tuesday, it's Tuesday afternoon. Where's my shit?
Yep. No, there is. I mean, it has many factors, but that is essentially the reaction, and the response to that reaction
Instant
in Beijing
gratification is
is
a staple of our economy.
it's not only. I think it's deeper than that. But you know, see the reaction in Beijing to that response or to the refusals to continue business as usual was blame the CIA again, blame the foreigner. So there is the thing that there has been absolutely no self-reflection on that matter. And looking at this now, the next step was we are not only withdrawing buying from you, we are making it more and more difficult for you to actually do that. Well, first of all,
We're going to make
if
it more
we don't
difficult for
buy
you to get the supplies to bake anything
exactly.
for anyone.
So the first, what the Chinese economy is experiencing right now, and this is another incentive of playing the big peace broker on a global stage, is we are open for business again. Yeah, so what? Yeah, is we are starting to build and bring online capacity much closer to home, or in countries where the labor force is cheaper, and shall we say less hostile.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing
Hey,
is
we
on
can
a
spend our money with people who don't openly hate us, who have the common decency and respect
absolutely
to wait till our backs turned.
exactly that's the whole
We
or big
know
component
what
of
you're
that.
doing, but at least wait till
So
we leave the room.
now is the withdrawal from of the Americans from a lot of functions that China needs. But even before that, what you said, let's not call it China. Call it any country. You put the whole world's supply chain in one country. That is
You're asking for it.
lunacy. That is lunacy. So
Not
not
only
and
that, the country doing the manufacturing was as far away as you could be realistically from the
yep,
bulk of where the products needed
it's
to
purchased.
land.
Yep.
That's why
So
the Japanese are so smart. Build it where they buy it. Japan, over 80% of their manufacturing is out of the country. Build where they buy. It's a great model,
mhm,
but we'll see in 30 years if that blows up too, or 80
yep.
or 50 or whatever.
I think that the Japanese in that kind of equation, the Japanese have been confronted even more with going back in history. Well, we used to own these people, we used to treat these people bad. Now we were the first ones really to try and make up, try to build something together, and this is how it's being repaid for. We are going back 100, 200 years in history, and are on the receiving end. We don't like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but look at today.
So,
Toyota Tundras, which is their full-size truck, they're made in Texas. You know why?
yep,
Because
because they are
Japanese are
bought
not
there.
asking for 10 million full-size trucks, pickup trucks a year with four-wheel drive
Yep.
capabilities. Why build them in Japan? You don't have the material, you don't have the steel, and now China's going to
Again,
figure out we don't have the materials.
problem is
Our the people who we're selling to don't want to buy from us. We are screwed.
well, when you look at the emptiness of the job market, there is. I mean, we talked about this before. That is only step one. Nobody is buying from us,
That's all
even
they
when
need to fail is for people to not buy their products. That's the only thing that they need. If
for
that one
any
thing happens, they're
change
screwed.
in China to happen, it needs to come from the Chinese people. You see, this change through engagement and commerce has failed.
Oh,
And
you were talking about change. I was talking about for collapse. They just need one
that is
major thing to
that is
screw up
look
and it's gone.
that is essentially the same thing.
Yeah,
And
well, that would be a
again,
change.
looking well, No, there is a history of that in China, and a repeated history of that. So whatever happened in China is there was a dynasty doing well, going on, and then fucking it up, and crisis. Yeah. So that is what happened throughout the history of China, and it is really really sad to see that where we are in a situation right now is that the people in essence have to suffer in order to see, well, this is not the situation, that is actually not a good situation that we are in. Yeah, and it is beginning to happen at the same time on the other side of the world where we are sitting is more and more people realize, well, no, this approach over the last X amount of years was probably not all that ideal in the long run. So if we really need to go back to say the 80s, yeah, that is unfortunately a pill we have to swallow. And I grew up in the 80s. It wasn't that bad. Yeah.
I was
And
created in the 80s.
yeah.
Big fan.
And let's just say if I don't have the latest smartphone every year or every other year, I'm not gonna die from that. Yeah.
I don't
So
have it now. I buy a new phone when my old phone is no longer able to be salvaged.
yep. And on top of that is when you look at in the process of buying a new phone, I bought, or I was considering a mid-range phone from one of the flagship makes, and I realized if I put down another 150 pounds, let's say another $200, I am getting something that is called a fair phone, which is not the most powerful item in the world, but every single part you can buy spares, which also leaves the option for you can actually
You
upgrade
can
that.
repair.
Ooh. Well, I mean,
I'm
what
not an Apple guy, so I'm used to my phone being able to be repaired. You Apple schmucks, well,
there is a major legislation. Colorado passed right to repair for farmers, and it's only a matter of time until it's rolled out throughout the country and for people like you
yeah.
and me.
And
So,
do you know what Florida just passed? If you're a pedophile and we catch you and the person is under 12, we kill you now.
a capital punishment for sexual offenses.
I just had to throw that in there. I'm a big fan of that law. That's a great law.
So, surprisingly, I had similar discussion with someone as well, and I said I absolutely sympathize with every parent that will take matters in their own hand. I'm not suggesting this as a modus operandi. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you
But
don't like movies, but they already did a perfect version of that in A Time to Kill with Matthew McConaughey and Samuel L. Jackson. One of their finest performances.
Like I said, I'm absolutely with that. I would certainly not sit down with a perpetrator for tea and business to discuss their difficult childhood. So
bring a nail gun.
So there is something, or there has been a discrepancy between what we are doing and what common Joe on the street thinks should be done. And I'm not saying common Joe on the street is always right. So common Joe on the street neither has the education nor the experience to make every single call. But waving the flag for education a little bit, maybe we should strive to do better. And particularly in terms of moving from instant gratification to understanding that not everybody out there has our best interest at heart, and putting ourselves into dependency on people that genuinely dislike us is not the way forward. So a little bit more self-reliance and capability would go a long way.
And that's a great That's a great thing to talk about, and we should make that the topic of an episode. But here, like in most places, we're going to end nowhere near where we started, and that's okay.
Well, there's plenty of things to talk about and say a little bit of self-reliance. Good luck fixing your roof. Apparently, there is something that needs to be fixed on Rish's roof.
We have hail, heavy thunderstorms and hail. I need to run up to the hardware store and practice some self-reliance. I need to plug up the roof.
And I would like to put it on record that Rish is not going to buy a gun and try to fix it.
No, I might be good on firearms for a little while. I'm actually thinking of moving more onto stockpiling rice
Heavy
and
artillery.
antibiotics. Oh, fun fact, certain brands of fish antibiotics perform the same in humans as human antibiotics. I won't say which ones are or aren't because I don't want to get sued, because that's what you assholes do.
Yeah, a healthy diet, a fixed roof, and all the best to you
And
over
no
in
guns
Florida.
today. Mark my words, no new guns.
Peace and out.